And welcome to the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you to the world of online communications in a show which was the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. So, in usual fashion, we ask our guests and each other how the weather has been where you are. So, Emily Watson from Hubbub, how are you, and how's the weather been where you are this week?
Hello, hi everyone. I'm well, thank you. And the weather's pretty grey, although we did have some sunshine at the weekend, which was very welcome.
And where are you coming from? Where are you coming from today, Emily?
Brixton in South London.
Great. Well, here in Birmingham, it's also grey. It's not. It hasn't been raining so far, so I'm hoping that'll stay off and we can get some walking in later on. Sweyn, are you able to say how you are and how the weather is where you are?
I can speak. I don't know if you can hear me. We're having
Yeah.
a few technical issues today, so it might be a bit rough around the edges. But weather-wise, it's great. Sun's out. It's cool but lovely day here in Orkney. And to make this a special day, I've just met my 20-month-old niece for the first time, so I'm very excited about that.
That's lovely. And what's your niece's name?
Florrie.
Laurie.
Florrie, short for
Florrie.
Florence.
Oh, that's lovely. Lovely. Well, welcome to Florrie, probably our youngest listener. I'm sure
She's listening attentively, yes.
Yes.
She
definitely.
can say yes and no on sheep, so that's good.
That's what we need. Okay, so what things we're kind of marking around for this week are in the week just gone, actually, we missed this one last week, Sweyn, was National Allotments Week. And we know that allotments are very popular, have been very good for people's mental health, especially during lockdown. I have several friends who spent a lot of time on allotments, and I've been to one beautiful one in King's Heath near me. So we're happy to mark that. And the theme for 2021 was plotting for the future. Haha. So they according to the nsalg.org.uk, which is the national what have you got on the screen there, Sweyn? National Allotment Society. National Society of Allotment and Leisure Gardeners Limited. Okay, they've changed their name slightly. They are saying, sorry, get my screen. They're celebrating the contribution that allotments make to a sustainable future. So we're certainly all behind that, and good to see that we celebrated. On the 18th of August, this week on Wednesday, is something called Never Give Up Day. Apposite for our program and for all the things we try and do.
Certainly is.
Yeah. I think this one comes from the US, but I'm sure we're happy to adopt it. It's all about cultivating a mindset of determination, which helps us to get through all the difficult challenges that life throws our way. So we're happy to celebrate that one.
We're happy to try and keep up with that ideal today. I can share this screen.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Never Give Up Day. It's a great screen.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So we're interested to hear people's stories of never giving up. I'm sure Emily has some of those from her work with Hubbub and community calling. We'll hear those shortly. A couple of more things that we've picked up along the way. On the 19th of August in 1839, details of Louis Daguerre's first practical photographic process are released in Paris. So photographs obviously help us to gain insight into people's lives and what's happening around the world as well as locally. So we're very pleased to celebrate photographic processes and video, obviously, when we can get it working. Okay, a couple of events. I think you picked up these ones up, Sweyn. On the 14th to the 30th of August, Edinburgh International Book Festival, online and hybrid. Online program of over 250 events for adults and children streamed live on the website, and alongside they're welcoming in-person audiences for a wide range of events in the program, which you can book on the website. And I think we've got that on screen now. It looks like a really interesting setup, and they've also said, I think it's pay as you feel. So if you don't want to pay for something, you don't have to, but obviously it's better if they earn some shillings for future.
It's an absolutely great event as far as I can see. I've attended a couple of events yesterday. One involving names won't come to me today, so I'll not bother with that. But they were really good events based on books and reading and general stuff. But the thing that I really was impressed by was how they've managed to take what last year was an online only festival and put it fully hybrid, because they've got an audience in the room, and they're managing very successfully to integrate the online audience into that as well, fully, and as if you feel you're almost there.
Right.
And I absolutely recommend just dipping into the events. You can bookmark the events that you're interested in, so that they send you emails and things even at the time, and just join in and see what you can find that's interesting. And let us know what you think of the hybrid nature of the events, because for me, that's the way forward for big events like this.
So what things did they do, particularly Sweyn, that you felt were appealing to the audience that weren't able to be in the room?
All sorts of little details, like 15 minutes before each event starts, the chat window beside the event starts, and 5 minutes before the event, you start to hear the hubbub in the room against a slide in the player, which is right there next to the chat window. And they've managed to separate, and they're just all sorts of little things, like they always start with the host addressing the camera saying welcome to everyone. That's only for a few seconds, and then they go to a kind of a taped intro while the host sits down on the stage with the guest, and then it's like a little late show, if you remember that, Pauline. And they just managed to completely transcend the fact that they're broadcasting while also keeping the online audience happy. There's someone in the chat from the book festival all the time,
great,
concentrating on those who are attending from the online way, in just the same way as the host in the room is concentrating on the live audience. I just think it's an excellent way. And they were getting because of the uncertainty over COVID, they've used a much smaller venue this year than they would have done 2 years ago and further back. And they had, for the events that I was watching, one of them has 120 online viewers. One of them had 300 and something. So the payment model is, if you're watching on your own, they ask you, if you can, to pay for a ticket. If you're watching with a group, maybe a little bit more than that. But they're also saying that please just pay what you can afford. If you can't afford to pay as much as that, pay a bit less. And I think that's just an excellent model as well for online. That's great. I was quite happy to pay a ticket price for the 2-3 events I went to, because it was just such an excellent experience.
Good. That's really good to hear. I think there's a lot of people are thinking about the hybrid model, aren't they? And to be able to recommend a model that has worked will be very good for us to be able to do.
My phone's ringing.
Okay.
I'll just let it ring out.
Yeah. Okay, and something else you picked up, Sweyn, we do talk about libraries on the show a lot, because we know they've been in the forefront of digital literacy, inclusion, etc. For many years, and so we're very happy when we see events in libraries. This is Glengormley Library in Northern Ireland, and they have a virtual events program which encourages people to learn how to use Zoom, how to use Teams. They have a whole list of things. If you scroll up to the top of that list there, Sweyn, e-magazines, Skype, using iPads, emails. These are all the things that we kind of take for granted, those of us who have some IT knowledge. But for people who haven't, it can be very beneficial just to have someone to sit down with to go through all these kind of things. And I see scams in the middle of all that list there. And my mother, who I often reference on the programme, living on her own in the west of Ireland, she says she's been getting a lot more scam calls recently, and she's kind of switched on, and she knows not to kind of give them any information. But I know other people, people get, the scammer conveys this sense of urgency that you have to do something now, and then people do get fooled. And we don't blame them in any way. It's a crime, and we want people to stop doing it, but people are going to keep doing it. So we otherwise we want to educate people about security and encourage them to not feel bad if they do get fooled, but try not to get fooled.
We used to say there were 3 things in digital inclusion, didn't we? Let me see if I can remember what they are. A device, data, and support, so that you can get going with what you want to do. But there's a 4th thing as well, which is staying safe. And I think it's very good to see that in the list of events there. What really struck me about this, though, was this is not aimed at older people or anybody that you might naturally think. This is aimed at young people starting college.
Oh, yes,
or older
that's
people
right.
starting college.
Yeah.
I suppose you can start college at any age, but primarily I think this is aimed at young people who sometimes we assume have all the digital skills that they need, but actually probably they don't. Probably none of us does. So it's always good to see basic information like this being available. And I think particularly through a public library, which more and more for the last, as we keep saying every week nearly, that they are one of the most important providers of digital services, digital inclusion work that there are. And it's just great to see a library that's taking this very comprehensive approach towards skills and training for its people.
Yeah, good point about the younger people as well. I think there is an assumption that they're digital natives, and I think it can be hard then to overcome that sort of mythology. So it's good to see a library addressing this. Okay, so we're now welcoming our special guest for today, Emily Watson. Emily is a creative partner at Hubbub, and she's been working with Telefonica over the past year on community calling. We reported on this project in November 2020 in a previous show, when in October of that year, Hubbub and O2 announced ambitious plans to help 10,000 households in the UK to get digitally connected over the course of 1 year. So they're asking through Community Calling project to ask for people and businesses to gift old smartphones, which would be professionally wiped, sterilized, and then loaded with connectivity before being donated to people who are digitally excluded. This was obviously to tackle isolation and reduce growing levels of electronic waste. So two hits, which is a really good idea. Starting in London Borough of Southwark, and then expanded to Lambeth, Lewisham, and a national rollout was planned for other cities around the country, including Manchester, Leeds, South Wales, and Glasgow. And we're catching up now with Emily, who, as I say, is a senior creative partner at environmental charity Hubbub. Hubbub creates practical campaigns that inspire the public to take environmental action through collaboration and strong branding and design. And they run campaigns covering topics like sustainable fashion, recycling, food waste, e-waste, and recently they've set up a project using AI and drones to tackle littering hotspots in coastal towns. According to the blurb, Hubbub's work is playful and they won't make you feel bad, which is good, because we don't want anybody to feel bad. We don't just want people to feel part of a bigger program and be able to stay connected. Hubbub's vision is for everyone to be an environmentalist, whether they know it or not, which sounds wonderful. So Emily's been leading on Hubbub's community calling project since the inception in April 2020. So, as I said, it's about a smartphone rehoming project to tackle e-waste and digital exclusion. And it works closely with community groups, grassroots organizations, and charities supporting individuals such as the elderly, low-income families, those at risk of homelessness, and refugees and asylum seekers. And beneficiaries are also connected with their local digital skills training provider upon receiving a device, which is brilliant news. The data, as we know, there are 7 million digitally excluded in the UK, but 55 million smartphones are going spare in people's homes and offices. So community callings played a key role in fighting back in the wake of a crisis that has isolated individuals from their loved ones and essential services. So Emily, you're extremely welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are really fascinated by projects like this because we know how important, as Sweyn has said earlier, having devices, also data and connectivity, and then people to help them use the devices. So this sounds like a perfect project for people who are listening or watching on YouTube. But first of all, can we know a little bit more about you and what's your digital journey been like? How long have you been, would you say you've been digital all your life, or is it more recent?
Yeah, sure. So I've always lived in London and so had a phone from quite a young age, just because my parents thought that it was kind of the safe thing to do, to give me a kind of, I think it was a Motorola flip phone or whatever was the trendy phone at the time, when I was probably about 11 or 12. And it felt a novelty at first, but as I've gotten older, and as phones have evolved and become more high tech, I think I've become a lot more reliant on it, both for my work and personal life, especially during the pandemic. Obviously being stuck inside, it was vital to be able to keep in touch with my family and friends that don't live close by. And I think that's also what pushed many people to donate phones to this project, having that similar feeling around knowing how reliant they've been on their smartphone or laptop during the crisis, and being stuck in lockdowns and not being able to see people. And it really has motivated people to think, oh, well, I've got a spare one in my drawer under my bed. I'm going to get that donated and help someone.
And so, is this your first kind of work role, or have you worked in other places before this?
So I did geography at university. So I always had a real interest in the environment, and always knew that I wanted to end up in a role that had an environmental focus. But I actually was working in journalism for the first 4 or 5 years of my career at Time Out magazine. So actually, they call it Time Out Digital, which is interesting because it is a magazine, but it's very much online now, I think, especially now when people can't really access magazines because no one's going out as much. Well, they weren't for a while. So I worked there for a while, and then I realized that I wanted to do something a bit more meaningful. So I found the job at Hubbub, and I was absolutely thrilled to get it because it's an amazing organization. And being able to work on this project has just been so wonderful through the pandemic. As I said, I have a real interest in the environment, but also knowing that we're having social impact as well. This project really kind of bridges that intersection between having impact both environmentally and socially.
That's wonderful. I'm very impressed that it's, you get 2 hits for the work that you do, and I think that will appeal to a lot of people, and that they'll want to get involved in a project like this, other than just, you hear a lot of the bigger tech companies or communications companies are now starting to realize that they actually probably need to give something back, because I've heard a lot of advertising for other ones we shan't name today, who are kind of getting on this realization, this journey that they need to be giving something back to the people that they helped so much. Sweyn is just sharing on screen now, community calling, the page on your website. So please tell us a bit about the project and kind of what kick started it.
Yeah, good question. So it started in April last year, and at Hubbub we're very collaborative. So we work with all different types of organizations, from local authorities through to big corporate companies, through to grassroots organizations, as you mentioned earlier, who are some of our partners on community calling. And we've done a little bit of work with O2 previously on another project, and they approached us at the start of the pandemic and said that they were getting a lot of people contacting them saying that they were in need of a device, and were they able to donate some devices. And they weren't really able to honor all these individual requests. So they said, Hubbub, can you guys help us come up with a campaign? Can you bring something to life whereby we can get old tech donated and redistributed back into the community? So we went away and had a team brainstorm and came up with community calling, whereby the public and businesses can donate phones they're not using anymore. And then we work with our tech partner, Reconomy, who are a B Corp. They're a brilliant organization, and they are kind of tech repair and recycling pros. So they clean up all the devices, they clean the data, so physically and digitally clean them, and then they check them for faults and package them up kind of good as new, with the data that's provided by O2. So O2 originally, we did a small scale pilot in Southwark just to help about 500 people, and O2 said that everyone could get 2 months data, which was lovely of them, but we realized that actually 2 months isn't really long enough. So they upped that to 12 months for the rollout, which, as Pauline mentioned, is now in 7 cities nationwide. And we're actually looking forward now to take it to new regions and help more people over the coming years. We realised how important this is, and actually how great the demand is for phones. I think we didn't think this was a project that was going to continue, but we've had so much interest, both from people needing phones and people who have phones lying around, businesses that have hundreds of them just in their offices.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was originally kind of O2's idea, but I guess Hubbub brought it to life.
Yeah. definitely. Can you just explain for people who might not be familiar with the concept B Corp? What does that mean?
Sorry, yes. A B Corporation is quite a new term, actually, and a new kind of certification, but basically means it's not a not for profit, but it's a business that's kind of like a business that does work for the greater good.
I think it's come from the US. I've heard it more used in the US, and now it's coming over here a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So organizations, I think the Guardian is one, Ben and Jerry's. So that, those kind of more purpose-driven organizations.
Yeah, and one I've had some contact with is Yachty, the digital identity business. That would see itself as a B Corp now as well. Great. So it's so have you been inundated with devices? Are you kind of in a warehouse somewhere, kind of holding them all back from spilling out the doors?
Not really. It's that I would have to say that's probably been the hardest part of this. We know, we've seen the data, we've seen there's lots of research been done by various organizations, and we know there's a lot of phones out there, but actually getting those phones to us and then distributed has been the hard thing. So kind of trying to make people actually act and go into your drawer and send it in, and we've just been trying to make it really, really seamless for people and like a really streamlined process. But there definitely are some hesitations. For example, people are worried about their data, which is completely fair enough, and that's why we've got Reconomy working with us, because they use kind of certified data deletion software. There's quite a few other tech donation schemes out there in the UK you might be aware of, and not all of them use like a certified partner. I think that's really important, because if you're just doing something that's volunteer led, for example, people don't have that reassurance that it's being wiped by someone using proper software. It could just be wiped by Bob next door, who might not have any experience.
I think that's a really important point. Yes, and using a certified partner is just taking it to another level of assurance, I guess. Otherwise, the projects themselves kind of have to give their own guarantee, which could come back to bite them if anything went wrong or it wasn't done properly.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've had good numbers of phones donated. So I think in total now we're close to 6,000 phones we've had over the last, since we started in around May last year, so about a year and a half, which is amazing. But obviously there's 7 million people that need phones, so we've got a way to go, and we're just at the moment trying to refine the process and make sure that we know the best way of getting phones. Reconomy also have really brilliant connections with suppliers that sell dead stock smartphones.
What?
Sorry,
dead stock. Okay.
So phones that probably wouldn't be useful to kind of you or I, but for someone who's very new to tech and just needs it for very basic, just accessing the internet, emailing and calling. These kind of phones are perfect, but they're not really deemed as they're very cheap to buy, basically. So there's another.
So in iPhone terms, what model are you? What's the earliest model you're kind of working with at the moment?
Probably iPhone 5, iPhone 5Ss. If you go any earlier than that, they don't really work.
Yeah. I'm still desperately clinging to my two 6Ss that I use mainly as cameras because they've got an audio jack, but that's another story.
Donate at least.
No, I use them every week.
Oh, Emily, nice one. Yeah.
one of them is connecting the audio for me today, since my laptop is in the process of dissolving. So that's that. They're essential equipment. Honest, I can't let go.
Yes, it's a good idea, thought, Emily. How do you persuade people to part with something they think they might need, or that they, feel still attached to?
It's a really tricky one, and I've been trying to persuade my parents to donate their old phones, and they keep saying, we need a spare. You don't know what's going to happen. And I'm like, we've been stuck inside for the last year. What's going to happen to your phone whilst you can't even do anything? But what we have found is that we've got some amazing case studies of people that have received the phones through this project. We've got about 10 or 12 from across the country, varying ages, varying demographics. And we found when we share those stories, it really helps to motivate people to send their phones in.
You've shamed me because I've just remembered it's not my main phone, the one that's connecting me to the internet today for other reasons that are too boring to go into, is an 11 11 Pro, I think, roughly, whatever that sort of level. Anyway, never buy the latest one. Who buys the latest one? I don't know. But I've remembered I've actually got 3 6S's, so you can have the third.
Perfect. Send you the details afterwards.
Yeah,
I've got the website.
What's the procedure?
It's hubbub.org.uk/community calling. All the details are there for our Hope Radio listeners.
What do people have to do? They have to print off a label, or what's the practical?
So we cover all the postage costs. So we basically ask you to send us your address, and we'll send you a kind of free post envelope.
Okay.
Pop the phone in and send it back to us. There are a few little things that you need to do. For example, unlock your phone from any iCloud or Google accounts and things like that, just so we can actually get into it. And if you want to wipe it yourself, you're very welcome to. But as I said, we're professionally wiping them all anyway for people's peace of mind.
And do people, I'm not being funny, but do people know how to unhook them from, all the things they might have put on it? I'm not sure. I'd know where to start. I mean, I would be able to do it, but it's
not always. We get a lot of emails with people asking how to do it, and we've added some instructions so that when you get the free post envelope, there's a little leaflet, and you can scan a QR code, and it gives you quite easy to understand instructions, but we still get people emailing saying they don't quite get it. But unfortunately, we really can't do anything with the phone if it's locked to iCloud account.
No.
So it makes the whole exercise pointless. So we really do try and stress that's the most important thing. If it's passcode locked, Reconomy can still get in. But if it's locked to an iPhone, an iCloud or Gmail account, then you definitely need to remove it from those because they're unable to put a new SIM card in.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Well, looking at the kind of the website detail, it says there are 55 million devices still kind of rattling around in homes around the country. That's a lot of devices, and you've only I mean, you've got 6,000, which is brilliant, but it should be up in the millions, surely.
I know. Yeah, there's definitely some things that are preventing us from accessing all the unused devices. There's other tech donation schemes out there as well, so I'm sure if you added all of our successes together, the number would be a lot higher. But yeah, there's definitely still work to be done, and we know that the demand doesn't outweigh the supply, but it outweighs the urgency. That there doesn't seem to be much urgency by people to actually get their phones donated. I think also with businesses, there's always such a level of sign off before things can be done, especially big.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's before you get to the public sector. I work in the council.
I've had some donations from local councils, but it's
good.
I
should hope so too. Well done there.
Absolutely. And is it your aim to get more from businesses? I mean, obviously individuals can donate, but they'll only give you like 1 or 2 phones maybe, whereas businesses might give you multiple devices.
Yeah, so we are focusing mainly on businesses now. So the individual donations will always trickle in, but generally the higher numbers and the better quality phones will come from businesses. And we're actually in the process of setting up a crowdfunder as well, which we will use to both drive donations and also drive funding to put towards things like purchasing dead stock phones to help us hit those targets, as I mentioned before.
If it's not confidential, roughly how much do you think it costs you in pounds to receive, reconfigure, and get out the door a phone?
I'm not sure I can say that.
Okay, that's fine.
I wouldn't want to say it just in case I'm not allowed.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's
not cheap. It's not cheap.
No.
When you think of it per device, it doesn't feel like a lot, but when you know how many people need help, it does add up. So we need to make sure that we've got different funding.
So I've just been thinking, I mean, John Popham, who started this show up, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, he always used to tweet on a Monday, what are you going to do this week to make somebody's life better? So here's a good idea. Donate a phone or make a cash donation to hubbub.org.uk/community calling. That's what we can do this week. That
sounds great. Yeah, especially because of the two, the phone and the eliminating, electrical waste. So is that, how does the connection with the waste part of the project, how did that develop with Hubbub?
So I don't think people realise how it's the manufacturing and the transportation of a phone, and also not just that, but once you're done with it, what happens to it. Often people don't do anything with their phones. As you just said earlier, you've got so many lying at home.
They're not lying around except one.
But people just don't really think about e-waste in the same way you might think about plastics, for example.
Yes.
Of kind of polluting the oceans. E-waste is actually the fastest growing waste stream in the world, and it is a real problem because people throw away. 50% of the devices we throw away are still working, and people love just upgrading to the next, new flashy device, which I think that's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse as the big phone manufacturers keep making these new snazzy devices. So it's really in the manufacturing, high levels of kind of carbon, water, but then there's the e-waste piece as well. So landfill is full of old smartphones.
It's unbelievable. It's really, really bad. I think local authorities are more and more coming to the conclusion that that there's more that they can do to kind of divert the wee waste stream into something more useful than just landfill. I would hate to think there's many councils or waste disposal outfits still actually literally landfilling electronics. There shouldn't be any of that anymore. And
that was made to celebrate the G7 summit. They made a sculpture out of, I think it was 20,000 pieces of e-waste, all the G7 leaders. So it was like Bojo and whoever else, Biden and the rest of them. And it was great. So more of that, please. We need art from e-waste and sculptures.
No, what I like about projects like yours is that it's not just relying on individual actions. You're actually plugging into the waste streams of businesses and local authorities, and you're actually almost changing the way that the system works. Your project and others that go side by side with it, because increasingly, now that they've noticed that projects such as yours are going ahead, organizations are looking for ways to do this. And it just makes, it all goes back to the efforts to make some kind of, in reuse and recycling terms, a kind of circular, no such place as a way type waste stream. Can't throw something away because there's no such place as a way. Give it to Hubbub instead. Yes.
Yeah, really good point. And what we've noticed as well, and what we've kind of been trialing, is when we speak to businesses, we say, do you want help reaching your sustainability goals? Because we can help you cut carbon, we can help you cut water by donating X amount of phones. So one donated smartphone equates to, I think it's about 53.5 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So if they donate 1,000, then they can have a great impact, and then they can shout about that and say, look, we're amazing, we've saved this much carbon. Which is exactly what we want to do at the moment.
So Emily, how were the participating cities chosen? Because I'm disappointed obviously not to see Birmingham in the list, but so how did you decide which ones to go for?
It was a bit of a mix. So we've done work across the country at Hubbub, and we kind of focused on areas where we had good existing relationships with local councils. We haven't really done any work in Birmingham, and it definitely feels like the one kind of bigger mission in terms of the different cities. So potentially in future, I think if we do expand, which we're looking at doing, Birmingham will be the first city we expand to. We've already had a few conversations with the local council there, actually.
Okay, that's great, because I know they're working on a digital strategy, and this looks like, we keep coming back, I'm going to keep banging on about this, but the two hits make it a bit of a no-brainer, really, and something we can definitely get behind. And I'm not saying that we have a huge reach, but we do reach some of the ears that other people don't reach. So I would certainly be, encouraging the people we're in touch with to think about focusing on this.
Is the list of cities short enough to read out for our radio listeners?
Yes, it's well, I mentioned it earlier. The started in Southwark, and then they stretched to Lambeth and Lewisham, and now the other cities. Well, I'll list them, but I don't know. Emily, you can say whether they actually are. These are the right cities: Manchester, Bristol, Leeds, South Wales, and Glasgow.
Yeah, that's
right.
Correct?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't donate a phone if you're not in those areas. So you can donate
Sure.
anywhere across the country. It just means the people we're supporting are based in those areas. So generally we'll work in more disadvantaged communities within those areas. So for example, in Manchester, we're working quite a lot in Rochdale, was quite a deprived area. So it's not necessarily citywide. We focus on areas that do need help the most.
Yeah. And do you know which part of South Wales you're focusing on?
Yeah, so in Swansea and Cardiff mainly, but also the kind of bit between Swansea and Cardiff, which, as I said, is often where more deprived communities are based, just kind of outside of the cities.
Yeah, sure. And it also, the blurb also says that you're working with local community groups. How do you decide which community groups to work with?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So what I guess makes our project a bit more unique compared to the other projects that we've seen doing a similar thing is that it's hyper local. So we're really accessing the most hard to reach people. And again, that's kind of where our relationship with local councils comes in really handy. We've done a lot of work with local authorities in the past, and they're a really good kind of gateway into those local community groups. We've also got a network of community fridges across the country. So basically, just for people that don't know what community fridge is, it's a giant fridge that encourages the sharing of surplus food that would have otherwise been thrown out. So it helps provide food for people that might not have access to food. So through that and through other Hubbub projects, we've also been working very closely with local community groups. So it's kind of basically just from previous projects and working with local councils. That's how we've accessed the community organisations. We've also had a lot getting in touch with us, just emailing our generic inbox and saying, hi, we need phones. Are you able to help?
Okay.
A bit of that as well.
And the third element of the project is obviously digital skills training. So how do you decide who does the training and who are you working with on that? Yeah,
so again, this is partly through the local councils. Often there is some kind of free digital skills provision in a city, but people won't know about it because it's not necessarily marketed well enough, or that it's not marketed to the right audiences. How do you market digital skills training to someone if they don't have a phone? So we're using the local councils, and we've set up like triage helplines where people can call a number and then they get assessed depending on what their need is. They might have a 6-week course that's a bit more intense, or they might just need a bit of a booster if they haven't used a phone in a while. But yeah, we're getting a lot of help on the local from the local councils on that, which has been really great.
Good, that's good to hear. And again, back to the work I've been doing in Birmingham, I recently started a role I was talking about on the programme last week of digital literacy coordinator in Northfield, which is an area in South Birmingham that has certain pockets of deprivation. And I'm covering both Northfield and Edgbaston constituencies, working with the local neighbourhood network schemes, which have been actively working in the areas for the last number of months, a couple of years now, I think.
Great. Well, I mean, if we end up moving into Birmingham, we'll have to connect and see if we can, consolidate in some way.
I think that sounds like a marriage made in heaven, yeah. And also, I've just noticed on Twitter today, Benita Wishart, who works for BVSC in Birmingham, tweeted that the NNS schemes around Birmingham have actually been are going to be funded for another 5 years. So it sounds like there'll be a good partnership there, which would be really interesting.
Which schemes? And
neighbourhood network schemes.
Oh yes.
I'm sure there's similar ones in cities around the country, but this is the Birmingham element.
Yeah, sure.
So your original plan was, Emily, to reach 10,000 households in the UK. So what percentage of that would you say you've reached so far?
So we're on about 5,000 and something. So probably just over 50%. But we're hoping that this crowdfunder that we're working on will help us to get to the 10,000.
Brilliant. And how big is Hubbub as an organization itself? So like, are you working on this full time, or are you working on other projects as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty much working on this full time. It feels like it's multiple projects because it's obviously in 7 cities, and no 2 cities are the same in terms of the process. But we're quite big. I mean, not actually that big in the grand scheme of things, but when I started 2 years ago, there's 25 of us, and now there's, I think, over 40. So yeah, we've managed to grow in a tough time, which has been quite a feat. Yeah.
I think you made a good point there about comms, and it's one I often revisit with voluntary organizations trying to get schemes up and running that they do great work, but they don't have money to spend on comms and marketing, and that's where kind of the gap is really. And I'd like to see more money spent on that to kind of, because there is a lot of good work on there like yours, and it'd be great to get it out a bit wider.
It's great when partnerships form where some of the partners can focus on the marketing, and while the others are doing the other stuff, because the best one in the world, it's very. You need to be a special person to be able to do it all, a special tiny organization to be able to do it all. And it's good from what I've heard of how you're operating, Emily. It's great to hear that you're so networked and so partnership focused. So that's good.
Yeah, we rely a lot on collaborating with whoever it is. We're quite open. There's not many organizations we wouldn't partner with because we just feel like it's the best way to have greater impact, and that's what we do.
It surely is. I mean, there are a few big organizations which sometimes you think are kind of almost trying to muscle into every territory. So it's good to hear of kind of middle-sized organizations, which is probably as big as an organization needs to get in many ways, if they work properly with others. So it's great to hear.
So are you of your compatriots, Emily, who studied with you, at university, are you some of you doing similar projects, or is it kind of everybody doing a lot of very different things?
It's a real mix. I knew I always wanted to get into this area of work, but I think doing geography is quite an open discipline. It doesn't really take you down one route specifically, not like doing medicine or law does. So I quite like that I was kind of open to choose. And yeah, my geography friends from uni are doing all sorts of different things. However, a lot of people at Hubbub did do geography.
Interesting.
Definitely a connection between doing geography.
What do you think why do you think that is? Is it just chance, or do you think there's a reason? Or?
I think generally people that do geography have an interest in caring for the environment, and I went to uni nearly 10 years ago now, but climate change was definitely being talked about at the time already, and it's only getting worse. So I think there's quite a lot of links between geography and doing environmental work.
And is data a part of your work as well, Emily? Because I know another geographer, James Bowles, who actually did a map of charities in the West Midlands for me some years ago. So I've a lot of time for geographers. Do you spend time looking at data?
I did quite a bit at uni, but I have to say that that's not really my strong area. I'm kind of more into the more like practical stuff and creative stuff than numbers.
I'm going to go off screen for a moment because I've just spotted another technical problem which I need to sort out. I'll be back in a moment.
Okie doke. Sure. Yeah, it's great to get maps of practical things. Like I say, James created this map of charities in the West Midlands using data from the Charity Commission, which I found very useful, because you often might want to support a charity but not know that there were charities in your area that were doing the work that you wanted to support. And I think the more kind of information like that gets out to people, the better, because the bigger charities, coming back to our discussion about comms and marketing, the bigger charities always have a big comms and marketing department, and they don't need as much help to kind of get the word out about what they're doing as smaller charities do. So the more I can in my work profile them, the better, I think.
Yeah, that sounds really useful.
So for the next, what do you see as your priorities for the next 6 to 12 months with the community calling project? What would you like to have achieved?
I guess the main priority is to try and develop more of a financially sustainable model. As I said, it's quite expensive, and so we need to try and secure additional funding and refine the process a bit so that we're cutting out anything that we don't think we need, which I think just happens over time naturally. The project started and grew very fast, so we need to maybe just take a step back and reflect, and hopefully in 6 months we'll have a better, more sustainable model financially, and we'll be well on our way to helping thousands more people.
I certainly hope so. I've got one last question before we move on to some of the other stories we picked up in the last week or so, and that is, why smartphones and not other devices? or other devices as well, say?
Yeah, so I mean, we really do hope to expand to laptops and tablets and other tech, but smartphones were kind of the only thing that was really in our budget when we started, because they're the cheapest to process, and I guess they are also good because you can move around with a smartphone, whereas with a laptop it's harder. You kind of have to be mobile. But we do really want to expand to other tech, and I think that's kind of part of the long-term plan, to include more tablets and laptops, because we know that there's a great need for those as well, particularly with elderly people that can't really use a small screen.
Yeah, it makes me think about actually other tech that we have talked about on the show as well, like Raspberry Pis and PlayStations, and we really I don't know of any project that as yet is asking for old Raspberry Pis and PlayStations, but there must be what do you think, Sweyn, a gap in the market for people who might have those? Maybe the numbers aren't there.
I think, well, starting first with the Raspberry Pi, it's not the most robust device in the world. It's designed to be very open and visible as to how it works, to be experimented with, and to do kind of creative things with it itself. It's not quite a digital inclusion device, really. As far as the other thing that you said, I can't remember what it was now. PlayStations. PlayStations. Again, I think there's probably more of a niche thing there for where PlayStations exist as a device for using them for some of the other things that you can just about use them for. I don't think you would go after reconditioning PlayStations and handing them out as digital inclusion devices, really.
No, you're totally right.
But if there was one in the household and there was a project which was able to support people that only had a PlayStation in their household as a device, then I think there's some work there that can be done. And I'm sure one or two of our guests in the past have kind of touched on that as something that other projects can do. It's not, I don't think, a thing that all digital inclusion projects like Hubbub or Connecting Scotland or any of those would necessarily focus in on. It's more of a thing to be aware of, that if you're struggling to get a family connected, there might be a PlayStation in the house, and in which case try to use that until they can get hold of a phone or something more suitable.
Yeah, sure. Emily, one other thing we ask our guests is if people want to contact you, where's the best place to find you online if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're welcome to contact me on LinkedIn, or you can drop Hubbub an email and it will get forwarded to me. So that's just hello@hubbub.org.uk. And if you want to donate your phone, then hit up www.hubbub.org.uk/community calling.
Great.
Got it on my screen, and my phone will be on its way to you.
Brilliant. Great. That's a success. Okay, so we've picked up a few more stories along the way, including a couple where we're hoping to have guests from the stories join us in the weeks to come. The first one is called Frea Digital Solutions Research Launch, and this was in the north of England. And this is bringing together 3 independent charities in Irish Community Care Manchester, Irish Community Care based in Liverpool and delivering services in the Northwest, and Leeds Irish Health and Homes. And I'm happy to say that I know people working in all those organisations, and I send them greetings from Birmingham. Collectively, they support 4,500 vulnerable people of all ages annually. And as with many other communities, digital isolation was one of the greatest challenges faced by the Frea partner charities during the pandemic, and particularly prevalent among the older Irish in their respective communities. So they conducted a program of digital research to find solutions to tackle the problem. And so they surveyed 100 older Irish people in the north of England and found that while 75% had access to a device, many continued to encounter barriers using them, and this included anxiety and a lack of understanding and support. So a series of recommendations were made for organisations working to increase digital access and understanding, and this was to ensure technology devices are fit for purpose and suitable to the skill level of individual users, to provide continued support and guidance, to facilitate a comfortable learning environment, particularly one-to-one and group settings, to have creative programming to listen to what community members want to see and take part in, and to encourage users to touch, handle, and interact with devices before any learning takes place. And I think, Sweyn, we would certainly encourage very much the last one. Kind of, the last thing we want is people to be scared of touching the wrong button or pressing something that they can't come back from.
There's nothing like having a go and just playing with a device or a few devices if you can get if you can set up if you can get a chance to do that. There's ideally with somebody who knows roughly what they're doing with the device, but it's a really good way of just overcoming that initial nervousness about going online, I think. Yeah.
It's good to see in the story that one outcome from the event that they had was an open invitation from 100% digital leads, we've mentioned before, to Irish Britain members, which is an umbrella body for Irish organisations around the country, to access their free training for working digitally with people in care homes. So it sounds like there's some good networking and support going on there. And who knows, maybe some of the people in that project would benefit from the Hubbub community calling project as well. So I could see a good link there.
It just looks like a wonderful signposting project, this, and sometimes that's what's most needed is to find particular groups of people, in this case Irish people living in the UK, and just say, have you thought of this, and help them on their way. Yeah,
definitely.
It's great project.
I'm often surprised that people don't know certain things, but because we spend our kind of part of our day, our weeks looking for this sort of thing, that we do know about them. So we hope we can help other people. And we're hoping to have somebody from Frea on the programme in September. So we'll come back to that one when we do. Moving on, we have a story from the Centre for Ageing Better, which has produced a lot of great research around COVID and the digital divide. And this is a report that appeared in September or October? What's the date on that?
That's the 6th of July.
That was July. Okay, going back a bit further. But I think they've only done some promotion work on it recently. And this is a report called COVID-19 and the Digital Divide, Supporting Digital Inclusion and Skills During the Pandemic and Beyond. And the findings from this research were that there is significant digital divide among 50 to 70-year-olds. That digital inclusion is not just about being online, but also about building skills and confidence. And even a small number of skills building sessions can really boost confidence and use. It points out that local and national organizations have had to adapt to continue to support users throughout the pandemic. Most organizations who responded to the Centre for Ageing Better research were able to move services online, 68% of them, or to telephone, 64%. And there are many examples of good practice where groups have supported people despite the challenges that they faced. Number 4 in the list of kind of findings is there was a lack of awareness among older adults of the support available. And again, this comes back to our point about marketing communications. The overwhelming majority of participants in the study were not aware of an organisation that could help them if they needed it, despite the prevalence of local support. And this is an ongoing challenge in digital inclusion. Organisations who were giving support need more financial and peer support to support digital inclusion. Typically, those small organisations who are offering digital support are very effective reaching out to people in need, but have financial and resource constraints. And I'd say marketing is one of them. Mm-hmm. They point out in number 6 that remote support has benefits beyond the role played in the pandemic, that accessing support by phone or online can be more convenient to people and more efficient for the provider. So we certainly want to support that. And number 7, which is, again, something we come back to again and again on this program, non-digital channels still need to be supported, because some people still don't want to use the internet and want to continue to use non-digital channels. As we spoke about last week or the week before, people, yes, can do online banking if they want to, but some of them want to go to a bank to meet their friends and meet people they like and who give them support mentally or emotionally or physically. So in the phone poll that this research did, many respondents who were offline at the start of the pandemic still didn't feel the need to start 6 months later. So, giving people the choice is still very important.
And I think it's something that you've made a point of in the past, Pauline, as well, as there will always be people in that with that view outlook, and what the rest of us can do to support those people are to help them out, to be their digital assistant, as it were. And if we realize that a parent or someone has difficulty getting online and doesn't want to get online, if we realize that there's something that we can do for them appropriately and taking account of all confidentiality and so on, then we ought to be able to step in and say, would you like me to do this for you? And I think there's room for projects in that sort of area as well.
Yeah.
Projects which aren't aiming to get more people directly into digital, but trying to provide a resource to support digitally the people who just don't want to go online for whatever reason.
So they can benefit from the online world, without being in it themselves.
Being forced to do. You'd obviously want to minimize, you'd want to try everything to try and encourage them to go online, because that's probably better for them. But if it's something that they just don't want to do, then we've got to support everybody.
I do think the technology needs to adapt as well, though, and more AI and more kind of human-like interactions. I think it's what will definitely help more people. Okay, so how are we for time, Sweyn? I've lost track.
Well, we started slightly late,
yeah.
So we're probably good for another 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, that's great. So we've got a few more reports and things we've picked up. The next one is called Mind the Digital Gap, and this is from Age UK London, who are campaigning for urgent action to address the profound challenges of digital exclusion impacting the daily lives of thousands of older Londoners. The gap between those with and without access to the internet is widening, they say, and the capital is at risk of witnessing a growing digitally excluded underclass. And they call on internet providers, the Mayor of London and local authorities, who they say have crucial roles to play, and action is needed more than ever. They're calling for an age-friendly rollout of the new digital skills entitlement, more social tariffs and genuinely affordable access to the internet for older Londoners on low incomes, easier to understand broadband contracts, I think we'd all like that, and boroughs to ensure equal access to information, support and services for older Londoners offline. The data they have on this is that over 200,000 older Londoners over 75 do not use the internet at all, and 1 in 4 of older Londoners over 65 would like to use the internet more. So those are the ones who deserve the help, or want the help. And just 20% of those aged 75 plus reported using the internet more during the pandemic. And there's a quote from one older Londoner who said, "I don't feel confident learning digital skills, but if someone will show me step by step, I would be willing to learn. Everything is now online, so even if I have to report a repair at home, I don't know how to, but it would make my life easier to know how to use the website. But I will never use online banking because I'm scared." So there's a number of issues there. That's, somebody saying they recognize that they should, they would benefit from using a website to report a repair, for example, but they're pretty adamant that they won't use online banking because they're scared. And there's good reason for that. There are people out there who do not have our best interest at heart and will be trying to exploit, vulnerable people. So we want to encourage people to stay safe online, and don't have to be online if they don't want to be either.
There's an interesting sentence I've noticed here, Pauline, that says that is digital inclusion accelerating? Well, not necessarily. Contrary to the belief that the pandemic has seen an acceleration in internet use amongst older people, the report shows that just 20% of Londoners aged 75 and over reported using the internet more during the pandemic, and 10% used it less. And I think that's fascinating, and needs a bit more unpacking that to see how that's all working and what's going on there. Yeah.
Another part of this report is a bit concerning, actually. A local Age UK said many sheltered accommodation schemes actually cut off the Wi-Fi completely to stop residents congregating in public spaces. So it was a COVID safety, exercise, but it then kind of stop people from having the access to Wi-Fi, which was happening not to be isolated, because the lounge was where the router was situated, and this person from a local Age UK said this was cruel, as this was the only way residents could stay in touch with their family and friends. I don't know what the gender of the person who's reporting. They reported 3 shelter schemes they're aware of did this in the borough, and they had calls from very distressed people living in sheltered accommodation reporting this. So that's we have to find a balance, don't we?
That didn't only happen in care homes, of course, because all sorts of communal places where digital services were available, libraries and others, they all closed, certainly for the first lockdown. And I think that caused that might actually explain some of the reason why people are using digital services less. I don't know. It'd be
maybe,
interesting to find out.
maybe. But it comes back to Hubbub and the community calling project as well, because obviously if people have phones and data, they're not relying on Wi-Fi, which makes them a bit more independent. So there's you know, we can kind of constantly find good support for the community calling idea. Emily, you said that the provider originally provided 2 months of data, and then they quickly realized actually that wasn't enough. And I mean, we have found that, we've talked about on the show about this as well, that people, like a Zoom call can use up 1 gig of data and people don't even realize it. And people who we know have been borrowing devices and so on have kind of zoomed, if you like, through a lot of data by just watching YouTube videos or whatever. So it's the awareness as well, isn't it, of how much data. So how did the provider calculate a year's worth of data? How much is that data?
So that basically is 6 gigs a month. So it's a good amount, but we still do get community organizations getting in touch and saying, you know, what happens if people exceed that?
Yeah.
And you just have to say to them, really, you need to just make sure you're being really transparent about how you can use up data and what are the programs and apps that tend to eat into data, and really just use it for what you do need to use it for, you know, contacting family and services and education resources, and not just streaming Netflix, and which obviously, you know, has a part to play in feeling included and digitally included. But
a thing that I think helps greatly as well is to know which day of the month your data allowance runs out on and starts again from. I know someone, it could be me, who keeps running out, like, and keeps doing stupid things, like in the last week when I could easily just wait a week or 10 days to do them a bit later on and not run short of data. So I think just knowing when your contract month day is really handy if you are somebody who runs up against their data allowance sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On which note,
we've run out of time. So thanks very much, Emily, for joining us. And
yes, thank you.
We hope that we will have you back maybe in 6 months to hear how things have progressed. And we hope that our listeners and watchers will feel encouraged to support the Community Calling Project and donate any smartphones that they have lying around, and do visit the website. Great, that's well, very good. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
So in the meantime, we hope you have a great week. Thank you very much.